Hi, and welcome to episode 4 of Spamhaus Deliverability Live. I'm Abby, and we're back today with Sri from the Spamhaus project. And we are also joined by a friend of Spamhaus, Matt Vernout, VP of Deliverability. Hi, and welcome to episode 4 of Spamhaus Deliverability Live. Cloud. I'm Abby, and we're back today. Sorry about that. Every time. Matt's going to be joining us today to discuss the latest updates in email authentication. Thank you for being here today, Matt.
Thank you for inviting me.
What did I say? There was going to be a hiccup, and there was.
At least it's predictable.
Yeah, this is true. Yep. This is true. Okay. Really looking forward to this conversation. So I'm just going to hand straight over to you guys. Everyone else, get your questions ready, and over to you.
Yep. Thank you, Abby. And once again, welcome, Matt. Always a pleasure to be speaking to you. So as the topic is today about the authentication and the latest updates from Yahoo and Gmail. So let's start our conversation with that. So can you just explain what are the updates to, say, the DMARC at these providers and from when they would come into effect and all the other details to people who might not be aware of this?
Sure, yeah. So in October, there was an announcement from Google and Yahoo together. And just as an FYI, we're not speaking on behalf of either of those organizations. We're just speaking on behalf of what we know. So the announcement basically was they're going to start mandating collectively the implementation of DMARC for brands. So they want brands to authenticate mail. They want them to use DMARC. And they're going to start actioning a bit tighter on spam complaint metrics. I've seen recently people are starting to talk about requirements around TLS as well, which I think was already, very strong best practice. But, these are the key things that they're looking for, good metrics, good authentication, DMARC, at least at a reporting policy going forward to make sure that, mail coming from brands is legitimate. The other thing, Yahoo's already moved into an enforcement policy with their own domains. Google has also announced that gmail.com and googlemail.com will move to an enforcement policy as well to help them protect their domain names and their brands.
Great. So we'll get to the Gmail and Yahoo enforcement, but just as, say, to reiterate, what Gmail is expecting from senders is the DMARC to be at least at, not necessarily at enforcement, but at least, say, at monitoring, say, P equals none for now. So if we talk about DMARC alignment, should SPF and DKIM align with the from address? Is that something that they're looking forward to?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, if you think about how SPF and DMARC work or DKIM work, so SPF is going to look at the sender domain. So that doesn't necessarily need to align, especially from an ESP platform. There are lots of ESPs that control the sender envelope domain, which is where SPF is controlled. It doesn't always align for technical reasons with your organizational domains and mailing domain. It could be a relaxed alignment. That's how we configure all of our clients, with a relaxed alignment for their envelope domain. So it's still branded. But for DKIM, absolutely, your DKIM key should align with your from address in either a relaxed or a strict manner. Most ESPs will probably ask for a relaxed alignment there, but absolutely make sure at least your DKIM key is aligned with your from address.
Got it. Thanks for that. So it would be interesting because I read recently, it was a day or two ago, that Gmail actually updated their guidelines, and they were saying like it's going to be SPF and DKIM. So it'll get interesting once that, but I think it's not right away, at least not in February, in the latest rollout that they have. Now, when you were speaking about Gmail and Yahoo getting into enforcement for their own domain, so how does this affect an average sender? Say a small business sending mails via using a Gmail address. through one of those ESPs. So how's it going to affect them?
Yeah, so if you're using a Gmail address as your mailing domain from your ESP, you're going to start to experience some challenges because, mail from gmail.com will likely be put into quarantine. Your ESP may take some steps to modify the mailing domain, with either a VERP type setup where they will move the domain into the user agent part or the alias part, and then give you a shared domain of some kind from their own platform. I've seen conversations about that happening with the various mail platforms. So basically, they'll rewrite the domain so that they can get a DKIM and SPF alignment for mail. Ideally, though, you would register a domain. You'd likely have a website with the domain anyways. Ideally, you would set up email on that domain, so you would get a fully branded experience for your customers anyways.
Yeah, so that's what we are also anticipating, that, hey, domains or senders might just rush to get these domains registered if they already don't have one and they've been relying on Gmail. So are we expecting a fallout, like a lot of new domains getting registered? And of course, new domains have zero reputation, so they have their own issues. Spam filters will be a lot more tighter on them. So any recommendations on how to go about with that?
I mean, if you're going to register a new domain, do it today. Like after this, go do it now. 30 days, I would say at a minimum, you need to rest your domain before you start sending mail from it to build sort of that, get past that, what's referred to as day old bread, if you will. You need to kind of get some type of longevity. If you have an existing domain, that's even better. So talk to your ESP about how do you configure your existing domain. But absolutely, if you're going to go out and register a new domain, sooner is better, because you'll not only have to let the domain age a little, you'll have to do some warm up around the domain once you start using it in 30 days. And you want to make sure you give yourself enough time to do warm up before the sort of February deadline that has been discussed.
Yeah. Totally agree with you. That's something which we see, like, yeah, the key word is warm up. We see quite a few brands, senders out there just starting to or sending emails from day one. And of course, not just Spam House, most of the receivers will be suspect about brand new domains because that's what spammers do all the time. So just to add on to that, a recommendation from our end is like, hey, look at who's your registrars, who's your hosting providers, and so on. Make sure they have some credibility. Don't just go with the cheapest provider out there, because cheap, free, there's nothing free. and if it's cheap, there's some pitfalls to it.
And talk to your ESP, right? Talk to your ESP support team, talk to your ESP's delivery team. They're going to give you the best guidance. Don't ask some random person on Reddit for help. Talk to your ESP. They're going to give you the best advice that they can give you to be successful from their network.
Awesome. Yeah. So to continue, when we're speaking about DMARC, I mean, it's not like Gmail and Yahoo are doing all these things. Pretty recently, they have been doing it for a long time. It's just that they're enforcing it now. So what do you think is the biggest hurdle for, say, brands or senders to get on DMARC or go to a DMARC enforced policy?
Well, getting on a DMARC should be super simple for most brands, right? Especially at a reporting only policy. It's a DNS record. You say, I want to start receiving information, right? That's it. You're not changing the impact of your delivery. You're not changing the impact of how your mail is being authenticated. But what it's going to do is it's going to tell you where mail, either pretending to be your domain or actually from your domain, is originating from, and allow you to then make a policy decision of, should I be authenticating this? Is it spoofing? So is it legit or not? That's going to be the hardest part for a lot of brands, is interpreting those reports. There are lots of great tools to help understand DMARC reporting as well. Once you feel confident that all your legitimate mail has been accounted for and is properly authenticated, then you can move into enforcement. I've seen brands do it in as little as 30 days, and I've seen brands take many years to get it completed. So it really comes down to the complexity and the desire to protect your domain from a brand on how fast or how slow it takes them to move to an enforcement policy. Now, there are other benefits of moving to an enforcement policy. It enables you to potentially open up for BIMI, which is a good one. As well as I've seen a lot of success for brands where reputation gets better, delivery input or delivery speed gets better, inbox placement as a result of better engagement potentially will get better as well. I've seen those benefits across the board with other brands. So sometimes, the effort is worth the reward.
Completely agree. And just to add on from a receiver's perspective, say you're a big brand, not just about protecting your domain reputation. It's just like, hey, we know like there's the whole custom domain things, a lot of other things. So just going to that enforcement policy gives the receivers the right, or they at least make that judgment on your behalf, saying that, hey, we can go ahead and reject or quarantine the mail, as you have mentioned. So I completely agree with all that. And just to add on to that, when you mentioned about like getting on to just a reporting policy is not a major difficulty. It's the enforcement which is difficult. But we also see that now, especially since there's just a couple of months, domains just get onto the bandwagon of DMARC enforcement, and even without knowing the implications, just go to a straight away to a vehicles reject policy or something like that. And that's something which we see what spammers do because they're lazy. They just go ahead and put whatever DMARC policy what they want. So how do we educate senders to properly implement DMARC? Because it's going to be more dangerous having a reject policy and not having the complete control of your sending infrastructure,
Sure.
right? So how do we educate?
Even within the last year, Microsoft announced they're going to start following reject policies instead of treating everything like quarantine. So we are seeing a movement of the major mailbox providers looking at DMARC more seriously in regards to following those policies, taking action, taking enforcement. And I think if you rush it or you do it poorly, you will impact your email delivery. No one's perfect out of the gate on day one. And I think sessions like this, talking about DMARC, there are lots of great resources from DMARC vendors around DMARC implementation and how to go about doing it. You can talk to consultants, but again, I would say talk to your ESP. They're going to be a great resource for helping you implement DMARC from their platforms for sure, which in turn will help your team understand what they need to do for their internal, corporate communication platforms. So I think there's tons of great resources. But start with your ESP, start with their delivery consultants, start with even if it's here's a recommendation of our partner to go work with from a DMARC point of view. Those types of things are a great first step for businesses.
Yeah. And again, just to add on to that, Matt, if you're setting up a DMARC, make sure that your mailbox is reporting mailbox is accepting those reports, because that's one thing which we see that, hey, you might just have, there are cases where there's no reporting address, but there are cases where there's reporting address and it's just bouncing. And there's something which we spoke about earlier, Matt, like, hey, you have an FPL email address, but you don't accept the FPL emails. So yeah, it's no good. And that's something which the receivers can see. So yeah, I think we're almost time over here. I'll try to sneak in one more question. And this is something which you mentioned, Matt, about not all senders being equipped to have their own domains, and maybe ESPs will try to use the verb and try to set their own, try to send emails so that there is some kind of alignment. So I think doing so would make the domains to share the reputation, right? So that's actually going to, so how can senders make sure that they don't share domain reputation across? I know receivers have a lot more points to look at, but what's your recommendation around that?
I think if there is going to be a shared domain being used from an ESP point of view, assign a subdomain with either like a client identifier, a client name, a client ID of some kind. So you have the delineation around, a shared organizational domain with a unique subdomain for each sender. Will it 100% separate reputation? I don't believe so, but I think it's going to be a good indicator, especially if DKIM aligns with that subdomain, that reputation providers and mailbox providers will be able to say, yes, customer A ID is different from customer B ID, and allow them to have a bit more granularity when it comes to filtering and reputation management.
Got it. Okay. And I think, I know we are almost time. We are time over here, actually, but there is one question. Let me go ahead and take it, Abhi, if that's all right.
Go for it. Go for it.
The question is, if I'm not mistaken, the authentication updates will apply to all senders, not only to bulk senders, right?
So yes and no. It depends on how you interpret the information. So if there's any bulk sender over, approximately 5,000 messages is sort of what has been put out in the guidance so far. But from the point of view of, are you authenticating your mail? I would say everyone should be authenticating their mail, right? It'd be a shame come February, mail's unauthenticated. They're either going to rate limit your mail, they're going to bounce your mail, they're going to block your domain. Things like list unsubscribe, header for B2B communications, not going to be necessary, but for your marketing communications, absolutely. There's also been discussion around, like, does transactional mail need list unsubscribe? I think if you're sending enough, generating enough complaints, generating enough, noise in a bad way, you're going to get classified as a bulk sender, and then the rules will apply. So I would rather say be prepared and get your authentication in order. As a general best practice, you should be authenticating anyways and protecting your brand. So will it apply? Based on the guidance, you need to be classified as a bulk sender, but why not apply it is what I would say.
Great. Thank you, Matt. Thank you. It's been a pleasure, and yeah, it was happy.
Happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Got a cheeky extra few minutes there, which is good. I hope everyone found the session really useful. As per previous sessions, the recording will be on YouTube and also on our LinkedIn live feed. I think we've picked up all the questions, but if there's any that we miss, we'll pick them up afterwards. And sadly, we're taking a break in January from LinkedIn Live, but we will be picking back up in February, where we'll be sharing more details about who that will be with and the topics. So I guess all that's left to say is happy holidays and see you in the new year. Thanks
again.